our Supreme Court literally in 2024, they're going to be finalizing for kids in schools to not have lunches anymore. That it's not required for kids to not have lunches. This is
Yeah.
all in time where we live in a neo-colonial state, a liberal state, where we have people like Ron DeSantis who are trying to denounce Black history by trying to say that we benefited off of.
Welcome to the We Got Problems podcast with co-hosts Curtis G. Martin, Rhonda L. Brown, and Khalif Johnson Sr., the one and only podcast where solutions get discussed to our community's everyday troubles. Each week, you will hear mind-blowing conversations and actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become more effective. We got problems and we got solutions.
All right, you guys, welcome to the show. This is We Got Problems, the podcast, where we talk solutions. And I'm here with my co-host, Rhonda L. Brown.
Hey, everybody.
Khalif Johnson Sr.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Lashika Phillips.
Hey, everybody.
And we have a special guest in the house today, Isaac Jasper. Isaac, why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Yes. Well, thank y'all for having me on your guys' show. I am a viewer. I am a avid watcher myself. My name is Isaac Jasper. I run the Indigenous Nightmare Podcast, which at the moment is currently doing a lot of different topics, conversations, and whatnot. But mainly has to deal with a lot with decolonial theory, understanding, as much as you guys talk about We Got Problems, I talk about problems on my podcast as well. And we try and come up with, thoughtful solutions, to what we can do, but also spread awareness to things that mainstream media doesn't talk about. The Indigenous Nightmare Podcast name started kind of like as a joke on Twitter. I am a big fan of wrestling, so the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, is someone who I admire. Even talking about him, sometimes I tear up. That's how big of a fan I am of wrestling. But on Twitter, I gained this name for being a nightmare, which was going into Twitter Spaces predominantly ran by settlers, and was denouncing a lot of what they were saying, which was a lot of anti-Black rhetoric, a lot of anti-Black talking points, a lot of anti-Indigenous talking points. And so I got this name, the Nightmare, Indigenous Nightmare. And so it stuck with it. And, I eventually had to change. My previous name was the Sideshow Podcast, because I have crazy hair like Sideshow Bob. And when I found out that someone had patented that name already, I did the thoughtful, respectful thing and, stated, after having a conversation with that podcast, I'll change my name, because I see how much it means to you. And obviously from a legal standpoint, I can't really do nothing about it. But, that's me. I'm 26 years old. I'm getting ready to start a microgreen business, which hopefully could help, with helping a lot of our comrades out on the street, homeless displacement, get them some food, but also it's something that, I really, really have been wanting to do for quite some time now. So
can I ask a quick question right here? What is a microgreen business? Can you break that down?
From my knowledge, from what I know, and what I've been acclimated with, when it comes to understanding, is a microgreen is a different way of growing food. And it predominantly is used like for garnishments and stuff like that. That's what a lot of people use it in salads and everything, but it's packed with protein and nutrients that you wouldn't think would be packed so far. Like the percentage wise of protein levels, nutrients, the vitamins that comes with it. And so I'm borderline vegan. So I have my days where sometimes, I crave meat and sometimes I crave vegetables. And, the microgreen business is, again, something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. And I'm just barely getting acclimated with understanding the ins and outs of a business, the ins and outs of, harvesting these things, these trays, and they're predominantly grown in trays. And that's really all I can kind of tell you right now, because business wise, I'm still kind of focusing on. But the ins and outs of microgreens is that it is super beneficial for individuals, and I highly advise people, even if you just want to do it on a personal level and not make any type of money off of it. If you're not in the business that I am in and trying to help individuals, you could just do it for yourself. It's very highly beneficial. Good for juices. Good for just eating raw salads. Anything garnishment. It has a thousand ways that you could use it component wise. So.
Okay. Have you started using it yourself?
Yeah, I actually haven't grown my own yet, but I have picked some up from Sprouts and whatnot, and yeah, I like it. It's something I could just munch on all day, and that's really the premise of it. I feel, we live in a society where they tell us to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's really something that was brought up, during times for which places like the meat industry was losing money, so they needed to, formulate things like breakfast, eating bacon, sausage, all of these things. And so microgreens is my way of kind of fighting that and getting people to understand that, there's healthy alternatives. You can make fried chicken out of, oyster mushrooms. You can make it out of lion's mane. These are things that people don't really understand because, again, we live in a society where manufacturer consent takes over, local, nationally, and internationally. So
Okay.
Greens.
Okay. So what is a day like in going through the microgreen business? Walk us through a day, what it would be like on how you go through your process.
The process that I'm following, and I got to kind of give this to an individual who's, teaching a lot of individuals, thousands of individuals out there right now. His name's Bagel Finagle. So shout out to him. He basically has shown me that the process of making them, it takes about a 7-day process to be harvested and to be grown. And within like 3 days, you start to really see them, pop, and they're grown weird. I've never really understood it until you actually kind of see it, see a time lapse of it of some sort. Because I personally haven't gotten my hands dirty yet, and that's due to funding wise. I'm waiting for a certain time period for me to be able to get the business afloat. But it's about a 7-day process, and you could yield, from what he's been teaching me. From a financial standpoint, you can make about $800 a week off of this. And for some people that's very beneficial. That could help a lot. And like I said, what I'm going to be using that for is to be helping the homeless, and also for personal gain as far as for, what I want to consume. But the whole business and as a whole is to help a community of people that need food, and they need it on a mass level, and they need it in ways that they've never gotten it before. So microgreens is kind of the way that I'm starting to see is the right way to go. So.
Wow, I have a question about the microgreens, but I'm kind of torn between the Indigenous Podcast and the going through the rhetoric with these people. I kind of want to know a little bit about that, but so I can start one of those right in my home. What would it take for me to get started with one of those in my home?
$100.
Oh,
From
wow.
my knowledge, $100. If you have $100, you could easily get a microgreen kit for a little over $60. It comes with the seeds, comes with the soil that you would need for that yield, and maybe $40 to get 2 LED lights, and a nice area where there's no. It's highly aerated, so that you're not getting anything infected. You're not getting yourself infected. And so, yeah, from my knowledge, from what I've been taught by Bagel Finagle, and I got to give props where props is due, because I wouldn't know about microgreens if it wasn't for Bagel Finagle. And so $100 easy could get you started on a personal level, and harvesting that like, again, juices is kind of what I'm kind of looking towards. The yield of what I would like to do is to make juices, smoothies, types of, I'm currently residing in Vegas. So as much as Hurricane Hillary is something that's on our radar, I do feel the effects of heat here and how it affects the homeless here. So, making popsicles and stuff like that, you get creative with it. And it's all beneficial factors. It all has health factors that you look at a pack of meat, and then you look at a tray of microgreens, and guaranteed the tray of microgreens has way more protein, has way more nutrients, and is way more healthier for you than that pack of meat that was FDA approved, And an FDA approved means that they allowed certain things to be passed through in order for it to sell. Microgreens is not like that. You grow it, you see it grow. So if anything goes bad, it reflects on the grower, entirely. So.
Well, this is very interesting. I'm like Curtis, I'm like torn. And one of the reasons that I'm torn is because I know that within this group and within our community, we are always having conversations about using the word Black versus African American versus melanated versus indigenous, like all these different terms. So that's one reason why the name of your podcast stands out to me. But I'm curious to know more about that. Like, why did you choose indigenous, and if there's any intersectionality with the microgreens?
In intersection wise, for me, I don't really see an intersection culturally. So it's more of just a business, model, to follow that I'm going after something I really, really, have admired again, like I've said for some years.
Okay.
The indigenous I'm Afro-Indigenous, so I consider myself a pan-Africanist, which means that I personally feel like words like Black, words like Black American, words like Negro, all of these words were used against our people to conform us to this imperialist entity that we call a country, which really I call an occupation. And when I say I'm Afro-Indigenous, I'm respectfully acknowledging that indigenous is not a term that is only used for North and South America. It is a global term, which means we are all indigenous to Africa. We are all beautiful Black indigenous children of Africa. But it's historically going through the contradictions and understanding from a dialectical material analysis of what region you might come from, and not just going to Africa and having some spiritual, which you think is some spiritual realization. It's actually digging deep into your roots and understanding it. And, from like Kwame Nkrumah's definition of pan-Africanism, it basically is an objective and a unification of all Black people, which means the Caribbeans, which means all the 44% of enslaved Africans, forcibly enslaved Africans that were sent to Brazil. They're a part of our diaspora. Every Black person that is on this globe is a part, has ties to Africa, whether they like it or not. And I say whether they like it or not because the people who I firmly fight against are people who are, call themselves foundational Black Americans, which is they like to erase the Northern indigenous perspective of liberation here. They think that they're the true indigenous people of Northern California, North America, whatever part of these 50 occupational states. And I fight them because they're intertwined in things called, eugenics. I'm not going to name drop on here because I really don't. I don't know if y'all want that. But for the most part, there's individuals that are high up that created programs and created organizations that are basically anti-Black while being Black. Mind you, that's the neo-colonial, neoliberal state that we live under. So when I say I'm indigenous, I'm respecting both sides. I'm respecting that my father's side came from forcibly enslaved Africans from chattel slavery, and my mother's side, which is Ohlone, and I can give you guys that. The tribe that I'm connected to is the Coastal-Noan Rumsen Ohlone tribe of Monterey Bay. Rumsen territory is really what we like to call it, and it takes over like Carmel. It's a large portion of land, and we're fighting right now to gain that back. And I acknowledge both sides because that's how it should be. You shouldn't be picking sides, and that's what the system wants. They want you to pick a side. They want you to engage in their whiteness, but then desegregate you in some capacity from your Blackness. So that's really why I call myself the Indigenous Nightmare. And I love wrestling, man. So.
Okay, so for those that don't know, what is Pan-Africanism?
Pan-Africanism, again, is the unification, an objective, like Kwame Nkrumah states, for any individual that it's out there that talks about Black power. They put their fist up, or they stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. They stand in solidarity with the Black and brown and indigenous individuals that have been shot and dead in the street, have been murdered by cops. Pan-Africanism is the highest expression of that, which means that you're not just acknowledging from a national level Black power, but you're acknowledging it from an international level, which means you show love, respect, and gratitude for every individual, because we are all exploited by this system, the American imperialist system. 880 military bases across the globe that inflict terror and fear on other countries so that we here could reap the rewards of having a Hulu, having a Netflix, being able to go out to places and stuff like that. In some countries, they don't have that. They're being bombed every 4 minutes, like Syria was when Barack Obama was president. They were being bombed every 4 minutes. Over 40,000 people died in the hospital. So, Pan-Africanism to me is the only way. And it's rooted in scientific socialism, which means it's rooted in the people, which means the people have the power to change what's going on, to not struggle, to make liberation happen, to make revolution happen. And so that's, to me, what I learned, what I know Pan-Africanism to be, is the liberation of all Black individuals from the diaspora, within Africa. And we're seeing spurts of that right now with, in South Africa with the EFF, in Niger right now, where they kicked out the French. They literally stated for years, you guys have been in our country, have given us aid, and it has not helped or benefited our country one bit. You have just stolen from us. And it's basically what it is. You've stolen from us and given us chump change in return. And you've rather, drastically changed the landscape of our country. And you expect us to just go through more years, more contracts with you. No more.
Okay, that's perfect. All right, so tell us a little bit more about where you were born and a little bit more about your heritage. I heard you mention your mother's tribe, and you mentioned a little bit about your family. Where were you born, and a little bit more history on you?
I was born in Pomona, California, Pomona Valley Hospital. I grew up in Ontario, California, and my family on my dad's side, they moved from Abilene, Texas, and they moved during a time period where we had, obviously Ku Klux Klan. We had a lot of these things that were funneling, and people were. The Great Migration is really what I can kind of go back to. Is individuals leaving the South to come to the West for jobs and whatnot. And that's kind of how my family ended up in Ontario, California. And I grew up there for majority of my life. I've lived in other states here and there, fluctuated. But my story is no different from anybody else's. It's not special. Some things have happened in the last couple of years to my family. But for the most part, I'm here, man. I don't really.
I have a follow up to that question. Could you tell us a little bit more about your mother's heritage and her descent, and a little bit about your father's descent?
Yeah, so I keep it short with my father. I'm still kind of researching and getting down to the where it all happened. What was the first slave name that was implemented on my ancestors. So that I can only give you a brief. Like I said, my family came from Texas. Predominantly all of my family and my dad's father's side is Creole, and so they come from Louisiana and whatnot. And when it comes to my mom, I can give you relatively all of the history, because she made it very, very clear at a young age that I was indigenous to these lands, and that I have a right to talk and speak about these things, the atrocities that America has implemented on us. And going back to Ohlone, it's a word that derives from a village of Ohon. And it's a generic term. It describes 8 nations of the Bay. So like when people think of the Bay Area, the first things that come up are E40, Too Short, 49ers, Oakland, the Oakland. These are all things that come up. These are big businesses and corporations, Silicon Valley. But yet they fail to realize that's indigenous stolen land. It always has and it always will be indigenous land that was stolen. And my tribe for the past, I would have to say, 20 years have been fighting for our sovereignty and trying to gain back, even the slightest smidge of respect that's not given. When they acknowledge indigenous people of the Bay, they talk about us like we're no longer here. And we've always been here. We have just had to either go elsewhere to live, in a manner of which is comfortable, but even then so is uncomfortable because we're not on our ancestral homelands. And so, that's where like Pomona comes in for me with my mom is, her, that little small sector, that little small family, migrated to Chino, California, Pomona, Ontario, on that whole little trifecta right there, Montclair. And that's kind of like where I grew up, at. And I was at first, growing up, I've always been immersed with the Black side of my family, the Black culture, and then the Northern Indigenous perspective and understanding and culture as well. Growing up like that, it's something beautiful, man. Like I'm sorry to say, but you wake up one day and you're eating tacos, and the next day, you got chitlins going. I hate the smell of chitlins. I don't know if y'all hate the smell of chitlins. These are, I was immersed, in culture from both sides, and that's why I'm the way that I am today. Is I personally feel if I didn't have both sides and understanding both sides of my culture, I probably wouldn't be speaking here with y'all. I wouldn't have this intellectual, what people call as intellectual, but really it's just me not doing what the system wants. The system's fear. There's a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois, who is a pan-Africanist as well, and a godfather of pan-Africanism, I should say. He talks about, the most fearful thing that this system, fears is a conscious Black man, a conscious man in general that knows that he's being screwed over by the system. So, I went on a little tangent there, but for the most part, my mom's side of the family is, and my dad's side of the family has molded me to who I am today.
All right. So when it comes to politics, if you care to share, what's your political affiliation, or do you feel like you're independent, or like what is it there?
I see this system for what it is. It's a two-party ratchet system, for which the liberals are the lube. They're the grease that makes everything going, hence the centrists. Or you think of a bird, we have the right wing, we have the left wing. If the right wing is foul, the whole bird's foul. I'm sorry. The way that I see it is, and just to be frank, I'm a communist. I subscribe to communism. People hear communism and they think, no people from the diaspora have ever been communists. There's never been any individual that has won a battle for communism. Communism is what defeated Nazis. It was not America. America did not come in until after they made their money, until after they got out of a Great Depression, quote unquote. They were selling to both sides. They were selling to the Nazis. Even after World War II, Operation Glasgow, Operation Paperclip, these were organizations and these were things that America sided with, which means they sided with Nazis. The first head of NATO was an SSR officer. So when people ask me, what do I politically subscribe to? I politically subscribe to what revolutionaries of our past time subscribed to, which was Pan-Africanism, and understanding that Pan-Africanism is a political ideology, but also a decolonial Marxist understanding from a dialectical materialist point of view, which is having conversations, having contradictions, like Mao Zedong says, who was a communist as well. When people hear communism, they think bad. They think people starving to death. They think people getting their money taken. No, communism is the highest form of freedom. It's the highest form of not wanting or not needing for what you want. So say for instance, and it gets very tough because when we think from a government standpoint, like land back, land back for me means an indigenous government system being implemented here in North America and implemented all across the globe, for which America has created overt or covert operations. That's 90% America's existence has been strife and contention, wars. So getting people to understand consciously that this system is rooted, for one, in racism. Capitalism and racism runs hand in hand. In order for capitalism to survive, you have to have people being exploited in order to make that trifecta of people gaining profit and whatnot, having these middle class, lower class, and upper echelon, but I call them petty bourgeois, haute bourgeois, Z, which is individuals that basically sit back and they watch people like myself who work at a warehouse, and easily within a day, push, and collect about maybe $200,000 to $250,000 in profit just by myself. That's just one person, and I work in a warehouse where there's over 1,000 people. So communism to me dismantles the bourgeois. It is a distribution of wealth. And when we think of like Pan-Africanism not only helps people who are from the diaspora and are from Africa, but also it stops what we see now today, which is individuals like France, institutions like France coming into Africa, any country that is not African going to Africa and excavating. I mean, we can talk about Congo. These are things that once we get to own the rights to our sovereignty, to what we want, things like hunger riddle away, things like homelessness riddle away, because we start dialectically understanding from a conscious level that homelessness is inhumane. Everybody should have a home. Everybody should have food. These are not something that a government should be able to dictate is right or wrong. We have in our Supreme Court, literally in 2024, they're going to be finalizing for kids in schools to not have lunches anymore. That it's not required for kids to not have lunches. This is all in time where we live in a neo-colonial state, a liberal state, where we have people like Ron DeSantis who are trying to denounce Black history by trying to say that we benefited off of slavery. What benefit did we have? There was no benefit. We had dispossession. That's exactly what it was. It was dispossession of our land, dispossession of our spirit, and dispossession of our culture. Things that we will never, ever be able to get back again. And that's where Pan-Africanism comes in, because again, it's the highest expression of Black power. If you again preach Black power, then you are a Pan-Africanist by process of elimination. There is no defense.
Okay. So this next part we got coming up is our rapid fire part. Okay. So these questions, there'll be about a 15 to 20 second reply, just whatever comes off the top of your head. Okay. What is your why? What makes you do what you do?
I love people, man. I want to see liberation for all. And the only way you see liberation for all is if you get your hands dirty. So getting my hands have been dirty for years.
Were there times you thought it wouldn't work? I'm sorry, Sheikah.
Go ahead.
Were there times you thought it wouldn't work?
Doubt, I think, comes with understanding the world that we live in. We're put in positions, that this system deems to be normal, and they shouldn't be normal. They're inhumane. And so, yeah, I've had times where I've had doubt, but doubt comes with the struggle. It comes with understanding who you are and growing.
Most important, a life lesson.
Most important life lesson is, it's like that Aretha Franklin song, "Young, Gifted, and Black." That's me.
Nina Simone. That was
Nina Simone. Nina Simone was the first one you had to sing it. Aretha Franklin, I believe, did a cover of it.
All right. If you could turn back the hands of time, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Read more James Baldwin.
Okay. Do you have an accountability partner, a mentor? If so, why or why not?
Well, I could be truthful on here and say, Khalif, your lives have been very inspirational. Being a mentor from afar without even realizing it. And I got to give props also to a mentor that I've yet to talk to in about 5.5 years, just due to loss of contact, and that's Lester Leday. He owns 15% of Edison, and he basically showed me how to be myself, to not be reactive and always be proactive to situations.
Okay. If you could sit down and have a conversation with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Malcolm X. And
Why?
the reason why is because, um, man, you just think of how intellectually sound he was, how internationally known from a geopolitical standpoint. Um, just to be able to ask him what it was to go to Mecca. I'm even getting emotional right now because he means a lot to me. Malcolm X does a lot. So if there's one person, and then I put him second because I miss my granny, I miss my great grandmother. So if there's someone I could speak to right now and have a conversation with, have a drink or something, it would be my great granny.
That's beautiful. Top two things you're investing in right now.
Work and getting my microgreen business starting. That's really for the most part, my two main focuses this month and next month.
All right, if you could recommend one book, what would that book be?
I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin.
Okay. What is the best tip you can give to our community to make it a better place?
The best take that I could say is you know who you know who helps
Oh, we
you.
have an earthquake. We have an earthquake, bro. Wow.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
rock it down. All right.
Wow.
Sorry about that, y'all, but yeah.
Yeah, right now we have an earthquake in California. Okay, it's not bad. It's an earthquake. It's not bad. Okay, excuse me. So,
Could you repeat the question again? Oh, my bad.
what is your best tip on making our community a better place?
The people who you see in your community every day helping people, regardless if they feel on a political local level or not that they should be in office, those are the people really who you should be siding with. Um, they're the people who help the community. They're the people who get up, uh, and think of others before they think of themselves. And those are the people who we need leading. That's the vanguard, in my opinion. Vanguard meaning the people who lead, the individuals who lead the people to revolution.
Wow. And last, definitely not least at all, where can people find you? How can they get connected?
They can find me on Twitter at Aloni9Gen. That's my personal Twitter. They can find me on YouTube at the Indigenous Nightmare Podcast. And over there, again, I showcase a lot of information. I can actually say today, your guys' podcast, I'll be on Cornell. Cornell West will be a guest on my podcast, talking about his presidential election. And then after that, might have some wrestlers or something on there, talking about, certain things. But you guys can find me on YouTube. I am on Fanbase too, which is a all Black owned business app. So if you guys aren't aware of that, that is an app where you can do just about everything that you can do on Twitter, Threads, Instagram, Facebook. It's all in one, and it's all Black owned too. So it's even better. Um, that's a place where you guys can see me. Instagram, obviously, at the Indigenous Nightmare Podcast or the Indigenous Nightmare. But yeah, those two are the main ones: Fanbase and YouTube.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Curtis. Curtis, check your mic.
Lashika, I said we'll definitely put that in show notes so the people can find you. But Lashika, what you want to leave the people with?
Oh, this is a tough one, man. I think what I want to leave the people with, know your heritage. Invest in knowing your roots. Invest in knowing your roots.
All right, Khalif, what are you gonna leave the people, my brother?
Man, keep doing what you're doing, King. I really loved some of the information you dropped. It was some really, really jewels that the kids can pick up and run with. That's usually what we do this for. So just keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate all y'all for having me on you guys' show, and I can't wait to rewatch this.
All right, Rhonda, what you want to leave the people with?
I'm gonna go back to the microgreens because I think I need to study up on that. But I would say, hey, that's what y'all need. Y'all need to study up on microgreens too.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I want to actually try growing it just for me and the family. But hey, I would say too, I'm gonna go on the lines of Lashika. Like, know your heritage, give back to the community, and teach the youth about heritage. Teach the youth of a better culture. Somebody had told me, because we hear this thought about culture all the time, and I always say this ain't our culture. But I guess they told me it is our culture, but our heritage is the one that's been altered.
Yeah.
So learn our heritage. Hey, you guys, we got problems, but we also have solutions, and we out.
Peace.
We got problems and we got solutions. Thank you for listening. To stay connected with us, like, share, and subscribe to the We Got Problems podcast. You can find us on social media platforms at Curtis Martin 247, at Rhonda Wrights Official, and at V_trash_vegan_.